Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest, oldest questions in all of philosophy and unpack what might just be the most influential answer ever given. This is all about St. Augustine and his incredible attempt to solve the problem of evil. I mean, this is the question, right? It's a puzzle that has kept people up at night for thousands of years. It feels like a huge contradiction. If God is good, he'd want to stop evil. And if he's all-powerful, he could stop evil, and yet, here we are. The world is full of pain and suffering. So how can all of those things be true at the same time? So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll lay out the problem Augustine was up against. Then, we'll dig into his wild idea about what evil actually is. After that, we'll see who he says is responsible. And finally, we'll look at the big criticisms that have been thrown at his argument ever since. All right, so let's jump right in with that core contradiction. What is the philosophical knot that Augustine was so desperate to untie? What Augustine was creating is something called a theodicy. You can think of it as a kind of logical defense of God. It's not just about explaining why there's evil. It's about justifying how a perfect, all-good God can exist alongside a world that often seems so full of cruelty. And this is the heart of the problem. If you believe in a perfect creator, then things like disease, earthquakes, and just plain human meanness, they become a massive puzzle you have to solve. And Augustine, he really, really wanted to solve it. Okay, so how did he pull it off? Well, Augustine's solution is kind of brilliant. And it all starts with this one radical move. He completely redefines evil itself. For Augustine, this line from Genesis was everything. It's the starting point, it's non-negotiable. The world God made was perfect, flawless, very good. And if that's true, then evil and suffering couldn't have been part of the original blueprint. So, if God didn't make it, where did it come from? And that brings us to the absolute cornerstone of his entire argument, privatio boni. It's a Latin phrase, and it means a privation of good. Augustine's big idea was that God didn't create evil because evil isn't a thing. It's not some dark force. It's just the absence of the good that's supposed to be there. He makes this really easy to understand with a powerful analogy. Think about it. You don't create darkness, right? Darkness is just what happens when you take away light. Sickness isn't a thing in itself. It's the absence of health. Augustine says evil works exactly the same way. It's not something God made, it's a corruption, a lack of the original goodness. He even takes it a step further with what some scholars call his aesthetic theme. He says to imagine the universe is this huge, beautiful painting. We're standing with our noses right up against the canvas, and all we can see is a dark, ugly splotch of paint that we call evil. But God, the artist, can see the whole masterpiece. And from his perspective, that dark patch is actually crucial for the beauty and harmony of the entire painting. Okay, but that just begs another question, doesn't it? If God didn't create this absence of good, how did it get into a perfect world to begin with? So for the next part, let's look at who Augustine says is actually to blame. And the answer, for Augustine, comes down to two simple words: free will. He believed God gave his creations, like angels and humans, the incredible gift of choice. So evil didn't come from God's design. It came into the world when those free beings chose to turn away from God, who is the source of all good. And here's the whole chain of events. You start with a perfect world. Then, God gives humanity this amazing gift of free will. But that gift is misused in the Garden of Eden. That single act of disobedience, known as the fall, is what corrupts human nature. It introduces sin into a perfect creation. And for Augustine, that corruption gets passed down to every single one of us. And this is the famous doctrine of original sin. Augustine's logic was that all of humanity was kind of seminally present in Adam. So when Adam sinned, we all sinned. It means we're all born into this fallen state, already sharing in the guilt of that first mistake and missing our original perfection. So at the end of the day, here's the bottom line for Augustine. God is off the hook. He made a perfect world and gave us the perfect gift of freedom. All the evil and suffering we see, that's on us. It's the direct result of the choices we made, not the world he created. But the story doesn't just end there in darkness. Augustine argues that God, in his mercy, provided a way out. He gave us a path back to him through atonement, through the sacrifice of Christ. It's a chance for salvation, a way to heal the brokenness that started all the way back in the garden. Now, for more than 1,000 years, this was an incredibly powerful and satisfying answer for millions of people. But it is definitely not bulletproof. So for our last section, let's get into the major challenges to this whole idea. The critiques against Augustine's Theodicy really fall into three main buckets. There are logical problems, scientific problems, and some pretty serious moral problems. Let's take them one by one. Okay, first, the logical flaw. A philosopher named Friedrich Schleiermacher pointed this out, and it's a real head-scratcher. He asked, if Adam and Eve were created perfectly good, in a perfect world, with no knowledge of evil, how could they have even thought of disobeying? The desire to do wrong couldn't have come from them. They were perfect. It almost suggests the flaw had to be there from the very beginning. Then you've got the scientific problem. Augustine's entire system depends on this idea of humanity falling from a state of perfection, but well, modern biology and Darwin's theory of evolution tell the exact opposite story. They tell a story of a slow, gradual rise from simpler life forms. The two stories just don't seem to fit together. And finally, there's the moral objection. And for a lot of people, this is the biggest one. Is the idea of original sin actually fair? Is it just to punish every human who has ever lived for a mistake made by two people thousands of years ago? To many, that idea of inherited guilt just feels deeply, fundamentally wrong. And this quote from the philosopher John Hick just nails the ultimate moral problem. Augustine's worldview includes an eternal hell, and that means there's suffering that never ends, suffering that is never redeemed or turned into some greater good. And as Hick says, that suffering remains forever a blot on God's creation, which makes it really hard to square with the idea of an all-good, all-merciful God. So where does that leave us? Was Augustine's Theodicy a masterful explanation that brilliantly defended faith for centuries? Or is it a really beautiful, really intricate idea that just doesn't hold up under the weight of modern logic, science, and morality? It's a debate that's still going, and it's one heck of a question to think about.